As the title of the video suggests, this is the best bike I've ever ridden. And I'm not just saying that because it is my team bike, but like this is quite a bike. So I guess I'll start this video with an apology that it's me giving a bike review to your fine selves and not my better half Chanel.
Give the people what they want.
Fortunately for all of you, such was the popularity of Chanel's videos, she actually signed a deal with another bike manufacturer, so you will probably see her reviewing bikes of her own. Anyway, we'll get on to this, and last year we had the choice between the Factor 1, which was the sprint bike, which is the bike I won the stage of the Giro on, and the O2 van, which was the climbing bike and more of an all-round bike. This is the love child, the illegitimate love child of those two bicycles. And I will go into a little bit of the reasons for that and a little bit of the science behind it as well. We'll start with those two bikes. Obviously the O2, the van, was my training bike, that was my it was a good climbing bike, it was just a solid all-round bike. The one was also a bike like I'd never ridden, and I never realised how flexible bikes were until I stepped on the Factor 1 and realised just how stiff it was for my superior sprinting skills. Now the one came with a slight weight penalty, which you'd expect from a bike of its nature. It was very much a breakaway sprint bike, and the other was a climbing bike. Now what happens on a stage like the Giro, where you have, like, I feel like I won that stage because of the qualities of that bike, but on that climb I almost lost the stage, and you know, an extra half kilo or a kilo lighter could have helped me out there. This solves all of those problems. There's a lot of similarities to last year. Maxxis tyres, black ink wheels. 2020 we had the 60s and the 30s, which is the depth of the rim. The 60s being slightly heavier, slightly more aero, the 30s being more suited to climbing. This year we, black ink have shot through the middle and given us a 45 option as well. Durace group set. We're lucky at ISN not to be sponsored by a group set, and the team just purchases Durace, which I think for a lot of cyclists would be the first choice. And there's also a 4i power meter, dual-sided, so you can see this is this side, and through there you can see the left side. They pair together via an app and give you your left leg and right leg balance, but also you can just use one of them if you wish. And normally, this is a training bike so I haven't got it, but normally with Ceramic Speed being a sponsor would have the oversized pulley wheels, but there's Ceramic Speed bearings in, Ceramic Speed bottom bracket, Ceramic Speed in the head tube also. Selle Italia saddle. This is the new Nove or Nove saddle, which is a little more compliant than previous saddles. Still got carbon rails, still really quite light. Elite bottle cages. I'm still on Speedplay pedals, which is a personal choice. Tubeless, usually run tubeless tyres for training. It depends how many times I've punctured, but actually Maxxis tyres are one of their biggest qualities in my mind are their ability to not puncture, touch wood. I think I've punctured once in a race this year, and that was in Aero.
Last year.
Last year we had one puncture in the Giro for the whole team. We didn't have a single puncture in Strada Bianchi for the whole team. So I guess that proves they're pretty good. Black ink handlebar and stem combo, and the new Hammerhead Karoo 2, which is, we'll go through in a separate video. And the brakes. Durace brake calipers, Swiss stop brake pads, Swiss stop disc brake rotors, and it's 160 on the front, 140 on the back, and on the time trial bike will likely be 140 front and rear.
You're missing a key point.
And I'm missing a key point.
VAM.
VAM.
Very awesome machine.
I spoke with Factor's engineer Graham Shrive, and what we didn't talk about was what VAM stood for.
But?
Or how they came to the name Ostro.
But VAM stands for?
VAM in Chanel's eyes stands for Very Awesome Machine. Gear ratios. On here I've got my climbing gears, might get me out of trouble gears. So that is an 1132 block on the back and a 53 front ring and a 36 chain ring. Now the shifting is just okay. I can shift, it's fine. Some people will be like, it's not smooth or anything. It's not that smooth, but I can shift to the little ring. I can then shift to the big ring, and I can go up hills as fast or as slow as I like. Let's get into the science a little bit. This is a 56, and first things first, you'll get a weight on it. It's very close to race spec. We could drop a little bit with running the 30 wheels. We could drop a little bit with maybe some titanium screw axles and some titanium bolts here and there. And that is 7 point, oh, it was lighter the other day, must have taken on some, oh, I don't know, I must have put on some weight. 7.75 kilos, which is about 500 gram saving over the one from last year. Big things here is the Aero. The one didn't have any cables on show, neither did this. The O2 VAM had cables, external cables to get the weight down. This had, everything is internal using a very fancy headset. And I chatted for an hour with Graham Shrive, who was responsible for a lot of the Cervelos before he moved across to Factor. He said where he put a lot of focus into was this area, because there's a lot that goes on here. Obviously it's very early to hit the wind. It's there's a lot of wheel, tyre, frame, fork interface. So what he did is he just separated it all, like a nice big wide fork, plenty of clearance. So clearance for some big tyres. Like at the moment these are 28s, but there's clearance there for 30s or 32s. He said what happens is you reduce the sort of interaction between wheel and tyre, and they become two separate entities which you can control far more. Now I've noticed the pattern on a wet, muddy Essex, you can see the pattern on the wheels from the mud, which is representative of how the air is coming off the wheel has changed compared to any other bike I've ever had. And you can see the fact that the fork is not interfering with the wheel at all. So that's awesome. It's already faster. It's already noticeably quicker than, well, anything I've ridden before. I think everyone jumped on the bike and immediately you're quite blown away by the responsiveness but also the rigidity of it. I know all the new boys that have come from different teams, they were all very impressed early on. Graham also worked very hard on this channel here, where sending the air off around the frame. Now, the shapes of the frame, and something that I found super interesting was, unlike most companies, Factor own their factory, and so they make all their bikes. So it's not like they just send their mould in and say, please build 1,000 of these. They make batches, and a far smaller batch of like a couple of hundred. So they can constantly be improving, tweaking, and if there's a mistake, then they can fix it, they can remedy it, rather than getting the frames and then trying to cover up mistakes. The important thing is how something hits the air, but what's more important is how the air then leaves a surface and all the vortexes that happen behind. Now, because Factor make their own bikes, what they're able to do is have a much sharper edge here. So usually most bikes will have an R3 edge, which is the severity of the corner. So how much of a 90-degree angle that corner is. Factor can run an R1. Now with that sharper edge, and this will be this edge here, these edges here, with that sharper edge gives a much better detachment of the airflow, which in turn reduces the vortex behind each section of frame. Factor, like a lot of other companies, use the camtail shape, and the reason for this is there is a UCI limit on the length of a tube, and then there is also a UCI limit on the ratio of the width of the tube compared to the length. So the way a camtail works is it effectively starts off the teardrop shape, chops off the end, and whilst not as efficient as the full teardrop shape, it's a tough one to explain because it still works better than having a tiny little teardrop shape that is just the length of this, in terms of getting the overall structural rigidity and everything within the bike. So the camtail, you see it a lot. God, so many Trek Specialized, Canyon, everyone uses it. Now, don't take this as the wind hitting this way. The wind is hitting this way. So whilst this might be 8 centimeters, and I'm not sure if that is 8 centimeters, this is your aero profile across the waterline effectively. So suddenly whilst this is taken from almost a face-on value, this section actually works from an aero point of view. It's much longer than it appears. There you go, that's what I'm trying to say. It's much longer than it appears. Seat post as well, and again, where those sharp edges really come into their own, on these sharp edges just manages to reduce the little vortices that are happening behind, and those vortices provide a vacuum behind the tube, which effectively is your motion, your secondary motion that's pulling the rider back and creating drag, which is why if you are riding with a rider behind you, you're getting some help from them, because they are taking the vortex behind them, that vacuum section goes behind them and not behind you, which is why in a team pursuit, the most difficult place to be is the front. You're the one separating the air. The second most difficult place to be is fourth man, because you're the one with that drag section behind you. So that's me rattling through the Ostro, and if I didn't think a bike was very good, I wouldn't do a YouTube video on it, because I don't have to do this. Like, this is a sponsored bike, it's my team bike. I don't have to do YouTube videos on it, but this is a very exciting bike, and I think in the World Tour there's been a couple of teams where people look at their bikes and go, that is a significant advantage, and I now believe that with this we are on terms with the best teams, possibly even ahead. So,
have you got a discount code for it?
I don't have a discount code for it, but if you ask Factor nicely and say that my YouTube video sent you there, then they might do me a favour and make you a favour too. So that's the Ostro, and yeah, I love it. Like, this thing's sick.